Hi, welcome. In this video, this is part two of my response series by way again of David from Miracle Canine. Again, put out a very interesting video here called One Dog Training System to Rule Them All, talking about the drama, okay, in the dog training world from a balanced dog trainer's perspective. And so again, going through some of these narratives here, again, offering my perspective on why all these controversies, the drama, why it's all happening. But again, I talk about, okay, the source of the problem. I talk about this idea that trains a learning based exercise, how it sets up a counterfeit picture of change for so many dogs and owners within the framework of response by way of how dog trainers are engaging a relationship problem at the very beginning, motivating dogs to respond from the get go, while assuming, because I understand that's all it's based on is assumptions, assuming that those responses represent that the perception of dogs are changing. But again, my challenge to that is saying, well, what's the criteria that actually these trainers are using to establish that? Like what is it? Well, the criteria that I talk about, okay, at the social level, influence and control, how that reveals, okay, based again on, a intentional interaction based method. Understand that's not part of what balanced dog training is. Okay, that's not what they're, how they're approaching, okay, relationship problem by way of an intervention. Okay, they're approaching it as a learning based exercise, and this sets up a tremendous problem. And then add to that the shifting sands, as he was talking about the shifting sands of the dog training world, where these trainers are all over the place and then pretending to offer the answers. It's like, no, why? So it doesn't even make any sense. But they have a lot of these trainers have lots of followers. People are buying into it because this is very popular. Okay, it's a culture. But then again, I encourage people to just start to layer this stuff up, and you'll start to see all the inherent problems, and you can point it right to what's being marketed by these trainers. So let's play some more of this. Again, this is the first time me watching this and responding to this video.
Of a risk of an altercation breaking out or
Mm.
things like that. I think a lot of times we'll have clients ask similar question of like, my cousin has a dog but they're not trained, so like, will my dog learn bad habits, or is it going to be a problem for my dog, or this or that. I always tell everybody, I'm not worried about training that the other dogs have. I am worried about their temperament. As long as the dog is a social good dog.
And it's like, what does that mean? As long as the other dog, so see, once you understand here the foundation, okay, I talk about the bridge building part of this, which is totally absent. Understand that, the bridges that are being built aren't being built to balance the way I talk about. So it puts it on the weight of everything just falls onto the dog, just assuming. Because that's all the trains are doing. It's like, it's like a roll the dice. Right? That's why you see bad things happening because it's not based on any sort of real standard. Okay, it's not based on a foundation of approaching, training for what it represents. It's not based on putting like not just assuming something, but actually testing it. Like I'm going to test that dog to see, to assess the perception of the dog based on criteria being reconciled. See, and that's the thing. And then it takes away the doubt. It takes away the assumptions. You can know. Okay, it's like when I talk about this whole Kevin Murdoch situation. It's a classic example. You go watch that all play out on my YouTube channel, right from the start, right to the end. It's a classic example of revelation, what's revealed, and then it's the way to know. You don't have to. It's not based on your opinions. It's not based on anything. It's you can line it all up by way of dog understanding intent. Once you start to line out everything up, then it's like saying, okay, and then looking at the level of agreeableness or disagreeableness, you'll see it. Okay, it's like you can trust it to know, and then you just connect the dots with everything else, and that's good news. Okay, if you want to know, that's good news. You don't have to assume things, and this is the problem in the dog training world. It's all based on appearances. It lacks depth. There's no depth. That's why you hear a lot of generalized talk. You hear certain language used that's just like it's just superficial. Personalities of the dogs and all this stuff. It's ridiculous.
I do not give a shit if they have any training under their belt, and I don't particularly care if they have many behavioral issues outside of the social issues, because I know they're not going to pose a risk to my dogs. Right? The only time
You don't know that. I mean, it's like walking into a dog park. You know what I'm saying? It's like Blindside. I just did the videos there of the showdown with Holly video. If you watch that whole thing with the video I just put out yesterday, or a couple of days ago, and equated to like Kevin Murdaugh's thing with Caesar, right? I talk about why people get blindsided. I mean, off leash, right? You see Holly appearing to be submissive going into a down, and Caesar's pointing saying, well, look at here. And, the dog's mind, got out of that. And then, he's talking to the owner and everything looks great from appearances. And then he reaches out, he moves forward and kaboom, you know, bitten into the arm. Okay. It's like, wow, that's interesting. But see, that's the thing is like when you're connected the right way, and this is the whole thing about leashes, okay, the way that if you watch how I'm, interacting with dogs, it's going to reveal. You don't have to work off assumptions. It's going to give you, you're going to be one move ahead. It's going to reveal. Okay, it's going to bring the problem to the surface. So you're not going to take a hit. I mean, I've only been bitten one time in over 30 years, and it wasn't a dog I was even handling. It was a dog got loose on a guy. Okay, and pinned me up against my van. I wasn't seriously injured, but this is the thing about keeping it safe. Now, bribery-based trainers, right? They could have bragging rights of, not getting bitten either and throwing treats around everywhere. But the change isn't happening at the same time. Understand that. So they're walking away. It's like leaving the scene of a crime. But again, it's understanding like what defines training, what defines a process. See, that's the problem here.
time I ever am worried about socializing my dog with another dog is if, from a social standpoint, there is a probability that that dog might go after my dog, right? Or if my dog, if I have a supervised social dog, tries to go after them, that dog would retaliate and try to then obviously contribute to the fight at that point.
See, that's the problem. So even with Dave, you see him with the muzzles on the dogs are off leash and things. The dogs are expressing control and all this. It's a mess. Okay, it's a mess. It's like that's not the way to do it. This whole thing with understanding from the get go. You bring in control, influence into. You're reconciling through the role, right? Everything and you build bridges from there, and then you can know. It's like going through a sequence. If you watch my videos, I'm going through a sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just going through, and it's very intentional.
Those are the only things that I'm really worried about there, right? And if the answer to that question is yes, the dog might try to go after your dog, or the dog may, obviously fight back. And when I say fight back, I think that also creates a little bit of confusion because, it's normal that if a dog is, being attacked by another dog, they're going to try to defend themselves. But there's a difference between defending themselves versus dog tries to go after them and then this dog equally tries to go back after that dog, right? There's a big difference between those two things.
Right.
So if the answer to that question is yes, those dogs pose that risk, I still stand firm on that is not an appropriate situation to be taking your dog into. You run too much of a risk that you're going to run into a big problem. You run too much of a risk that as you're socializing your dog and improving on their experiences, that you're going to have a big setback with things. You're going to create more.
And see, that's the problem. So David had this conversation. This is what bounced off. Well, I wouldn't see when I walk into a situation, it's like just how things go down. Okay, it's already mapped out. It's an exercise, right? It's about relationship. So there's no kind of this type of conversation even happening with me. People come in and say, "Hey, Dale, my dog doesn't get along with other dogs." The game, I lay out the game plan. You can see me on my chalkboard. I've laid it all out. Boom, we do this, 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 and this. It's all sequenced out. There's no kind of like, well, this other dog. If I'm working off using another dog, well, the other dog has been through. I'm using a dog that the perceptions have aligned properly as well. So it's like you're not putting anyone at risk. It's very methodical, very intentional, and then it's very predictable, right? It's like that's what you want. You want to know. You don't want to be guessing or working off of assumptions or this might happen. I mean, give me a break. It's like when I walk into a situation, it's like you are how you think. Okay, that's important. You are how you think. When you change how you think, it changes everything. And so when I'm walking in, I'm setting a tone right away, not going over petting all over the dog and doing any of that. I'm like right away, right? I'm starting to reveal the truth to that owner to get them going because you want to change how they think really quickly. You need to, it's not like, oh, show me this or I want to see this. I don't want control manifesting, period. I already know the deal and what's going to happen. So, it's like getting their parenting style altered right away, which makes sense. Like, what do you have to see anything? Like, that's the thing. There's all these trainers out there, like, oh, I want to see this. It's like going in and say, you're dealing with a selfish child that's already out of control. Oh, I want to see little Johnny on the video games, like, explode and throw a fit. Like, doesn't make sense. I'm taking the parents' information and say, hey, I got a problem, going right in and starting to create change. Not to see anything. Why would you? You already know the deal.
More toxicity surrounding the other dogs. So you got to ask yourself that question first. From there, let's say they're just untrained but they're social dogs, right?
If you can hear people talking but can't understand them,
you've got to know your dog. Like just, if you're going to go camping, like take your dog camping, obviously, but try to not fall too far into the trap of make sure you have ability to give your dog breaks, right? Maybe, bring some type of travel pop-up kennel that you could kind of contain the dog temporarily during maybe meal times or when you guys are distracted doing things or stuff like that. Maybe if you're camping and you have a tent, you could just be able to give your dog breaks in the tent and they're going to be good, obviously. Whatever your dog's triggers are, if you know that there's a probability your dog may try to go after the other dog, make sure you're using your muzzle in those situations. It's okay
to use the muzzle. See, that's what he'll do. These trainers put the muzzle on, but the dog's still expressive control. It's like, training a police dog through, with protection training with wearing the muzzle and the guy's rolling around the ground. The dog is still expressing control through the bite. Think about that. It's like control still manifesting. No, I don't want that. I want to intercept that. Okay, so totally different. Understand this, when you talk about balanced dog trainers, they have a totally different way of thinking about things. They're in a reactive posture. And I keep talking about this thing about they're not dialed in. They're not dialed into the relationship the way I talk about that's going to, they're going to create change. They're not dialed in that way at all.
To say, hey, during these family functions, anytime we're doing social time, just forever, the dog is going to wear a muzzle, and that's just what your management technique is going to be. That's okay, right?
Like forever wear a muzzle. That's a joke. I want to get those muzzles off. Okay, I mean, I understand tools are, a muzzle represents control. So you get a dog trying to rip that muzzle off, and you see, I pointed out in a couple of his prior videos, you shut that down. You want the dog to be agreeable. Right? Because everything's about relationship. It's a reasonable demand. And you're in process at the same time. So I want that dog to accept the muzzle, accept the crate, everything coming together properly. And then all those things can fade into the background. Okay. The point is to get to the point of the relationship where tools are gone. I have the trust with that dog. I go camping or whatever, the dog's floating around with me. Everything's A-okay. I mean, that's what you want. I mean, why would you want that? This whole drive-through mentality. You just want it's because then what happens is you're locked into what? Managing a problem situation until something bad happens. It's like a ticking time bomb.
You could just do that. And there's plenty of clients that I have that have dogs that just they want their dog to be involved in certain aspects of their day-to-day, but because of the nature of those events, like camping, you're hanging out with your family, you might be a little bit distracted sometimes. There's a lot of resources and stuff around things like that. They just feel more comfortable keeping the muzzle on long-term in those situations.
No, I want to get it off, okay? He's just and that's what happens. There's so many balanced dog trainers are like that. Just keep the remote collar or the muzzle, right? I mean, think about that. It's a temporary tool. It's meant to be a temporary tool. That's it.
Situations.
Yeah.
Right? That's okay, right? Whatever routine you've determined allows that situation to go well, just stick with that. And then maybe you hit a point down the road where you're the dog has been in these camping situations.
because they say that because that's all they can offer up. Understand, balanced dog training, they're stalled out. I mean, it's why I talk about the whole Murdoch situation where their objection points to certain reactions that you see on my videos, reaction with the dog. Murdoch put a clip in there out of context, right? I talk about me stopping with the dog. The dog is another dog's across the street. The dog that I am interacting with is having a reaction, right? In that moment, I'm working through it. And Murdoch tried to label it as the dog was like he's strangling the dog, he's choking the dog, abuse. This is very Zach George like. But see, their point of contention is the same point that they can't work through a relationship problem with their own dogs. Like, do you understand? Like, you have to understand what's going on here. They have dogs that are reactive, like Grey Goose. You go through the whole thing, and he was like portraying that dog as a balanced dog for months, and Grey Goose is reactive the whole time. Like just and the test blew that out of the water. But understand their objection points are the problems. Okay, their objection it's the same jumping on the Jeff Gelman bonker situation, situation with the startle reaction of the dog. Like Murdoch's the type of guy to be these trainers jumping all over that. Oh, abuse, have him cancel him, right? So, and don't get me wrong, I don't advocate the bonk. Watch the video I did about why that reaction happened with the dog, right? So it's about clarity for the dog, making sense to the dog. There's a way to do it, right? To be dialed in. So yeah, you don't use the bonk. Okay, influence and control is still part of the equation, but in a way in which the dog comes into agreement with. But understand that these trainers' objection points, the points where they keep using the same inflammatory language, well, that's the stopping point where they bottom out at the same time, being able to fix dogs. Just understand that, and they bend towards what bribery and accommodation. There was a video that Murdoch just put out here a couple of days ago. I haven't responded to it yet. Dealing with a dog, and it shows him like the dog starts stopping the street. The dog starts going. He lifts the dog up physically. It's ridiculous. It's not about abuse or anything like that. It's about engaging in a way in which brings clarity to the situation where the dog is going to come into agreement through through your role the right way.
Situations for like 2 years without any incidents and everything's gone well and he really likes the other dogs and like food's been around and there hasn't been a problem and like everything's just been good, like you might be able to start fading it out. But like maybe that's a routine that you just stick with long term, that allows your dog to be integrated but allows you to still be responsible and safe with stuff. Like there's so many ways you could approach it. You could also say,
Like safe. There's no safety in appearances. Okay, understand that.
hey, like let's say we're camping for an entire weekend, and there's going to be 3 other dogs there and tons of family members and stuff like that. Like maybe we say like those situations are not appropriate ones to bring your dog because it's just going to be too distracting for you and too overstimulating for your dog. But maybe you set up, one night little trips or just like, for a year you set up like day hikes with like 2 of the other family members or something like that, right? And you do that for a little bit and kind of build up on some success with things. So you kind of could create some stepping stones leading to, ultimately being fully integrated with the pack.
Stepping stone. I talk about proper bridge building. Okay, there's a
But a lot of this is going to be contingent on how bad your dog is or isn't, right? Obviously, the more severe of the issues and the more risk of like if something goes wrong, this is what's going to happen. The more safe and the more management we're going to implement as we kind of work towards this goal. And then on the contrary, the more social your dog is and the more like, if something happens, it's not that big of a deal and you can easily interrupt and stop it and stuff like that, the more you probably can fully integrate more quickly just with some safety protocols. So that's how I would be viewing this, is understand the social status of the other dogs, not the level of training that they may have, to determine if you want to let your dogs around those dogs or not.
See, and that's just like, okay, you're operating off of just false hope, and that's what I talk about. This whole thing about the proper foundation, building bridges the right way. I mean, the most important part of the process is what balanced dog trainers they jump entirely over. right? Because that's not how they engage a relationship problem with dogs. It's appearance focused. So I'm gonna stop part two here. Again, this is the first time I'm watching it, so these questions are coming up. Go through them. He'll get to the drama part of the dog training world, but it's all one and the same. Understand that, if you want, again, you want to see the method, okay, go on my YouTube channel. I talk through everything. I show the whole, like the board and trains, even the 2 week process, the thing with socialization, okay, how to build bridges the right way, okay, reconciling your role, those core ingredients I talk about, to know, okay, to have to have real assurance and trust that you can trust what you see, to get away from these tools, right? Get that muzzle off, right? But see, when you start talking about balanced dog trainers, they don't do that, because it's problematic. Okay, I understand it's full of holes and gaps and problems because those core ingredients are not reconciled the way I talk about. And the only way that can happen is through a intentional interaction based approach. Thanks for watching.